What's up everyone, Dimitri here. In this video, I'm going to do a complete breakdown of Ray Allen's shooting form. Ray Allen was by far my favorite shooter growing up, so I'm excited to break this one down. I'll show you his footwork, how he holds the ball, his set point, release, legs, and more. Alright, let's dive in. Let's start with Ray Allen's footwork and shooting stance. As for his footwork, Allen used the 1-2 step the majority of the time. Here he is when going left. And when going right. Ray did use the hop from time to time, but not as often as the 1-2. The other thing I want to point out with his 1-2 is just how fast it is. Watch his feet. Watch how quick this is. And that clip was in slow-mo. When sorting these clips, I had to watch these in slow motion to make sure it wasn't a hop. That's how fast it is at full speed. And then watch how fast he gets off the ground. As soon as that second foot lands, boom, he's in the air. Ray Allen has one of the fastest releases, and throughout this video I'm going to point out a few different things that he does that makes his jump shot so fast, and this is one of them. His feet are extremely quick. Another thing I noticed is sometimes when Ray was shooting from the corners, instead of using the hop, or starting with his right foot behind his left foot slightly and stepping in 1-2, he would start with his right foot wide and bring that right foot back to shoulder width in a sideways fashion, which I'm assuming he did this so he wouldn't step out of bounds with his right foot at the beginning of his shot. As for his stance, it's pretty textbook. He keeps his feet a little wider than shoulder width apart, and he points them to his left, with his right foot slightly ahead of his left, or closer to the basket than his left. Ray, and most great shooters really, starts his shot by facing towards his left. His feet, hips, and chest are all facing the left. What this does is it brings his shooting shoulder more forward than his left shoulder, putting his upper arm and elbow more in line with the basket. This makes it easier to shoot the ball straight. You can really see what I mean by shooting shoulder more forward here from this angle. Next, how Ray Allen holds the basketball and how he grips it. All fundamental here for Ray. He's got his guide hand over to the side of the ball and his shooting hand in the middle. And if I rewind this a bit, you can see he has the ball elevated off his palm and resting on his fingers. See that space there? Ray's grip on the ball is pretty wide. Look how wide his thumb is spread here. And his whole hand. If I pause it here, you can see that he's splitting the middle of the basketball with his index and middle finger, which leads me to believe that when he shoots the ball predominantly with his index and middle finger together. Shooting with equal force from those fingers is going to make the ball go straight, given how his hand is placed on the ball right here. Also, he has more space between his index and middle finger than he does with the rest of his fingers, which I find interesting. I don't think I've seen that before. Last thing with his grip. From this clip here, it looks to me like he's actively squeezing the ball. That ball is locked in there. It's not moving in his hands at all as he raises up for the shot. Some players actively squeeze the ball like this when they shoot. Some players have a looser grip and just kind of let the ball rest in their hands. That's just based on preference from shooter to shooter. And yeah, back to what I just mentioned. See how his index finger and middle finger are pointing down and his ring and pinky finger are kind of floating there? That shows he shot this with his index and middle finger. Okay, next up, the start of Ray Allen's jumper. His shot pocket, dip, and set point. Ray's shot pocket, or where he begins his shot, is right about here, in the middle of his body. From there, Ray dips the ball and then raises it up to his set point. On his dip, Ray brings the ball down to just above his knees, and then he brings it up the left side of his body to his set point. Here's another reason Ray Allen has such a fast jumper. His dip and raising of the ball up to his set point is so fast. So Ray starts his shot at his shot pocket here, dips the ball down to just above his knees, and then he raises the ball up to here, his set point. Your set point is that brief pause right after raising the ball into the air and right before actually shooting it. It's a key checkpoint in any shooter's form, and it can be an indicator for how well or poorly you're going to shoot the ball. Ray's set point is right around the middle of his body, maybe slightly to his right, and it's above his head, with the ball going as far back as the middle of his head. I've found that the location of your set point really doesn't matter in terms of your accuracy as a shooter. A higher set point is harder to block though, and generally, the higher your set point, the slower your shot, but that's clearly not the case for Ray Allen. He still gets his shot off so fast. Let's take a look at Ray Allen's form at his set point now. As for his hands, he's still got his guide hand to the side and his shooting hand in the middle and now underneath the ball. And from the side view, you can see that his palm is under the ball and facing upwards and back a little. It's actually facing a little sideways too, but I'll show you that in a minute. Having your palm facing up or even a little backwards at your set point is going to help you get good arc on your shot. A palm facing more forwards tends to lead to more flat shots. Back to this shot here. Because he has a high set point, because he brings the ball up over his head, Ray's elbow is pointed upwards at his set point. To bring the ball above your head, your elbow's going to come with it, so that's why it's angled upwards here. And with his wrist flexed back, here are the angles his upper arm, elbow, forearm, and wrist creates at his set point. Now, Ray doesn't start with his wrist flexed. Here's his wrist as he's lifting the ball. And now it's flexed back to around 90 degrees. Ray flexes his wrist as he lifts the ball to his set point. Okay, last thing I want to show you with his set point. In previous breakdowns, I've talked about the importance of getting your shooting elbow to face the basket. It is easier to shoot the ball straight when your elbow faces your target. At his set point, Ray has his shooting elbow facing the basket. His upper arm, from his shoulder to his elbow, points towards the basket. Now, what's interesting though, and what makes Ray's shot a little different from the more fundamental look, is Ray's forearm and wrist are tilted to the side. See that? Elbow facing the basket, but forearm and wrist tilted. Ray also keeps his off arm and elbow pretty wide, so combining that with this forearm tilt, it creates a lot of open space for Ray to see through when he shoots. The other byproduct of this tilting action is it makes his shooting palm face sideways a little. I showed you earlier how it's facing upwards, but it's also facing a little to the side too. More on that in a second. Okay, the next part of Ray Allen's form, his release. So I just showed you how when Ray reaches his set point, his forearm is angled to the side, which makes his shooting palm face up and sideways a little. This isn't exactly ideal. It is easier to shoot straight when your palm is right under the ball and facing upwards. A little back is okay too. But ideally, you don't want any sideways tilt in it like you see here. Ray makes it work though. Watch what he does. As he begins to shoot this ball, as he goes from his set point to his release, Ray's forearm and wrist rotate to his right a little, so that his shooting palm eventually ends up facing straight up into the air. In fact, he already starts shooting the ball before it's fully facing up. It's only right here where it's finally facing straight up. And now, from there, he flicks his wrist straight towards the basket. Here it is again. This clip isn't as high quality, so there's less frames here, but here he is at his set point. Forearm is tilted and palm is facing up and to his left. As he shoots, he gets that palm facing straight up, and now with a flick of the wrist, the ball is going to go straight. By the way, KD does this exact same thing. Forearm tilt, palm is facing up and to the side at his set point. As he continues with his shooting motion, he rotates his wrist, and now his palm is facing up right before he shoots. Okay, so right before he actually releases the ball, Ray's palm is facing straight up. He then snaps his wrist forward, and his palm finishes facing down, with his index and middle finger pointed downwards, and his ring finger and pinky finger facing more forward. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, that's an indication that Allen shoots predominantly with his index and middle finger together. Those two fingers apply the most force to the ball. Moving on, Ray's guide hand on his release. Okay, so Ray has his guide hand to the side of the ball throughout his shot, with his palm facing the ball. And then right before he actually releases his shot, he takes his guide hand off the ball in a pretty unique way. Ray snaps his guide hand down and to the left a little. His fingers go from facing up at his set point to facing forward and to the left. A lot of shooters let their guide hand just sort of fall off the ball, or they bend their wrist back slightly. But Ray Allen has this very distinct forward snapping motion. The other part of this is, Ray does flick his thumb while removing his guide hand too. I really can't tell if his thumb is actually flicking the ball or not. What do you think? Regardless, while not ideal or fundamental, clearly this wasn't something that affected Ray Allen's shooting ability. Next part of his release, his follow-through. Ray fully extends his shooting arm on his release, locking out his elbow. And his shooting elbow finishes high above the level of his eyes, giving him great arc on his shots. Last part of his release, his eyes. Small sample size, but this is the only clip where I could tell. It looks like Ray keeps his eyes on the basket throughout his shot. Alright, last part of Ray Allen's shooting form, his legs and his release time. Ray uses a lot of legs on his shot. He's not one of those shooters that barely jumps. Ray gets high off the ground on every shot he takes. The fluid motion that is his jump shot all starts with his legs and bending his knees, and the rest flows smoothly from there. As he catches the ball, dips it, and starts to raise it up to his set point, Ray bends his knees. This point right here is where he's finished bending his knees and he's about to jump. From here, he starts to extend his legs and explode off the ground. As he reaches his set point, his legs are already fully extended, and now he begins to actually shoot the ball. Another reason Ray has such a fast jumper. because he explodes off the ground. He jumps really fast. Two other things with his legs. He kicks both legs forward. And he also turns left in midair. I showed you earlier how he starts his shot facing left a little, but then as he shoots, he turns even more to the left. Alright, last thing with Ray Allen's jump shot. I've mentioned a few times this video how quick of a shot Ray has, and I want to show you just how fast it is. I'm going to start this timer the moment before Ray starts to dip the ball, and I'm going to stop it the moment the ball is completely clear from his hands. This way you can see just how fast he dips the ball and explodes off the ground. So this is the frame right before he starts to dip. Here we go. Just about 3/4 of a second. Now, just to give you something to compare it to, here's Steph. From the moment before he starts to dip to the moment the ball is completely out of his hands. 0.66 seconds. Ray has a higher set point than Steph, so it makes sense it's a little slower, but even so, it's not that far behind. Here's another comparison with someone who also has a high set point, Kobe. 0.9. Now, release time is gonna vary slightly from shot to shot, but I wanted to give you an idea of just how fast Ray Allen's jumper is, and give you something to compare it to. And again, what helps Ray shoot so fast is his footwork is fast, his dip to his set point is fast, and also because he explodes off the ground when he jumps. His footwork and stance. How he holds the ball, his set point, release, and legs. These are all the different aspects of one of the best and purest shooters in basketball history, Ray Allen. That's going to do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned a thing or two. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Man, I can't go this entire video without talking about that patented Ray Allen swish. Now that is a splash. So pure.